Well, welcome everyone to our monthly chat about various immigration matters and procedures and everything else. I hope your day is going well. It's actually a beautiful sunny day here in Michigan, and I hope it's the same where you are. So today, the topic, as you know, is the Diversity Visa Program. Now, most of you probably don't know what the Diversity Visa Program is, but you do know what the Green Card Lottery is. Well, thankfully, they're one and the same. So today we are going to be talking about the Green Card Lottery, but of course, the government has to have an official, more formal sounding name for that, and that is Diversity Visa Program. So thank you very much for joining us. As a preliminary note, I would like to say a huge thank you to my legal assistant and right-hand person, Carolyn Taylor, for all of her wonderful research and her work in preparing the slides, and for being my technical assistant always. Without her, I don't know what I would do, and this presentation would not be possible without her help. So Carolyn, thank you very much for everything you do. And with that being said, let's get started. Okay, so what is the Diversity Visa Program? So Section 203C, if you want to look it up, of the Immigration and Nationality Act, which is the US's immigration laws, the set of immigration laws, provides for diversity visa immigrants or diversity immigrants. Now that's up to 55,000 people, 55,000 people from around the world who can obtain a green card every year without having to go through the traditional route, the route of either having an employer sponsor them or perhaps having family members such as a spouse or other person sponsor them. So it really is a lottery, and 55,000 is the standard number each year. This number is set by the statute. Now, unfortunately, not everybody is eligible for this program, and as we'll see in a couple of minutes, there are some definite requirements in terms of who can apply, how you apply, when can you apply, and even if you win, will you actually get a green card through this program? Now, over the last 30 years, I've known probably, I'd say about 100 people who have won, and it really is a great program. Those people actually do get a green card, and it allows them to reside and work in the US on a permanent basis or go to school with no limitations. Now, with that being said, there are certain eligibility criteria, and the main one to really focus on is the fact that the purpose of the Diversity Visa Program is to try and have people from countries that are traditionally underrepresented in immigration to the US, to have more folks from those countries to obtain green cards and thus add to the diversity of the country. So we'll get into the mechanics a little bit later on, but just as an overview, basically people file an application. You can only file one per year. Each member of your family can actually file one if they meet the criteria. And the Department of State, or DOS, then holds a random lottery through their computer and picks the winners. And then the winners, depending on certain factors, can then proceed, hopefully, all the way through to getting the green card. Now, with that being said, let's look at the program in terms of country eligibility. So as I mentioned, not every country is eligible. Countries like France, England, others where there's a lot of people, in India, for instance, a lot of people immigrating to the US every year. Those countries are not eligible because they're not part of the government's interest in diversifying the people who immigrate here. So the types of countries, I mean, they break them into different regions of the world: Africa, Asia, Europe, North America, Oceania, and South America, and Central America, and the Caribbean. And it's not just people from those various areas that qualify, it's from specific countries within those areas. So every year, the Department of State comes up with a new list of countries. Many countries are chronically undersubscribed in terms of immigration, and so you'll see them on the list year after year. Other countries, it's hit or miss. Some years they're on the list. Other years, they're considered to be no longer underrepresented, and hence they won't be on the list. So what are the requirements for a person to apply? Unlike the lottery, where you simply go into a store and, as long as you're over 18, you can buy a ticket, this program, the Green Card Lottery, has specific requirements. And if a person applies and does not meet the requirements, the person is automatically, the application is null and void. They simply really don't qualify, even though they've submitted this application. So first of all, you have to have been born in one of the countries that the Department of State has identified as having historically low rates of immigration. Again, Department of State publishes a list of those specific countries. And then there are some options for people who may not have been born in those countries, but may have some connection to them. Next, you have to have at least a high school education or its equivalent, or you must have 2 years of prior work experience within the 5 years prior to when you apply. And those 5 years have to be in an occupation in your country that require at least 2 years of training or experience. So it's not that you can work at any job for 2 years and meet the requirements. The requirement really is either high school education, a diploma or an equivalent, or 2 years in a job that meet certain requirements, and specifically any job that requires 2 years of training or experience. To check if a person's occupation qualifies, what they can do is check on the U.S. Department of Labor's O-Net database. This is a very helpful database, chock full of information regarding every occupation you can conceive of, and it provides information regarding what the U.S. government, and specifically the U.S. Department of Labor, believes would be the minimum requirements for a specific occupation in the U.S. So whether you look up registered nurse, or whether you look up truck driver, or anything else, it will give you what the U.S. government believes to be the normal training and or education that's required for that job. So that's the place to look. And now for some examples, just to show you what we mean by this. So these are printouts from O-Net. These are abbreviated printouts that are focusing on the important information. So first, in this case, construction worker. So, it talks about job zone and the education, et cetera, et cetera. But if you look at the last entry where it says SVP range, okay, where it says 4.0 to 6.0, this type of job is not eligible. A job normally has to have an SVP range of up to 7, 6 to 7, that is. In terms of defining the range, it's a little complicated, and if you're concerned or you're not sure, let me know. Feel free to email me, and I can clear it up for you in just a moment. Prior to, I would say about 20 years ago, there was a different guide used by the Department of Labor. It was actually called the DOT, or Dictionary of Occupational Titles, and it was much easier to look in that 2,000-page directory and figure out exactly, and immediately what the minimum requirements are. In this sort of O-Net job zone or job SVP job range, you have to understand what the range means, and it gets a little more complicated. Now, let's just take a look at another job, HVAC technician. As you look at the bottom, this has an SVP range of 6.0 to 7, and it is eligible. So someone with 2 years of experience in this occupation would qualify for the DV, or diversity visa program. Now, options for people who are not native to eligible countries. Now, this gets a little complicated, but it is a way for people to still be eligible for this diversity visa program, even if they weren't physically born in a country that's on the list. So let's go over some of the options here, and there are a couple. First, you can claim your spouse's country of birth, as long as the marital relationship existed before you filed the diversity visa application, and as long as your spouse is eligible. So if you apply and then get married, that's not going to work. The marriage took place after you applied, and that's not going to be sufficient. Now, the other one is the more complicated, and you can claim the country of birth of one of your parents if neither of your parents were born in your native country and your parents were not residents of the native country at the time of your birth. So let's give you an example just to sort of boil this down. Okay, so Natalia was born in Canada while her parents were both going to school on student visas in Canada. So they're not Canadian citizens. They're not natives of Canada. They were simply there temporarily on student visas to go to school. While they were there, Natalia was born. Her parents had actually been born in Poland. And while Canada is not an eligible country, as you can imagine, Poland is. And so Natalia actually can file a diversity visa application because she can claim Poland as her native country for this application process, solely because, again, her parents, while they were physically present in Canada when she was born, they were not there as Canadian citizens, Canadian landed immigrants. They were simply there on a temporary basis to obtain an education, and then would move back to their home country of Poland. Now, The sad thing is that if you do not meet any of these requirements, then there unfortunately is no way to apply for this wonderful and very helpful program. Instead, you'll have to seek a green card through one of the traditional routes. And again, whether it's through employment or through some type of family relationship. So what is the process for all of this? The first step is the easiest. And after that, if you're a winner, it gets more complicated, but they do make it very easy to submit what they call an EDV entry form. So an EDV, the E part simply means it's something you do electronically or online. There thankfully is no cost to apply. At various times, there have been suggestions that maybe the government should be charging for this application because it does require the government to do some processing, but that's never been a serious consideration. The goal, of course, is to increase the diversity of people immigrating and from all various countries, and so there is no cost, and I don't expect that there ever will be a cost to do this. Now, there is a specified time period each year, so this is an application that you file, and if you don't win, you can actually keep filing it annually, but you have to file it within the designated time period, which is usually October to early November each year. The Department of State issues an official announcement every year, giving people enough time to get ready to apply, and then they will tell you when the specific application time period is. They then, of course, use their computer system to pick the winners, and those winners are normally announced in May. And once you're announced, then it's a matter of seeing whether you'll get to complete the process, and hopefully you will. So just as an example, if you would apply in October of 2024, you'll know whether you've won in May 2025. Now, the Department of State will not notify you of your application's decision by mail or email. To check if you were selected, you have to go in, log into your application to find out what the status of your application is. Now, in the old days, just as sort of background for this, for decades, what they used to do before there was an e-application, people actually had to mail in paper applications to the Department of State. And as you can imagine, the Department of State was flooded with paper applications from all around the world in various sorts of, some were perfect, others looked like they had come from overseas and had been on 10 ships, and they probably had been. They were barely held together. But with that being said, the government then had to go through all of the paper applications. This EDV entry form is so much easier and much more efficient, and efficiency is very important with this process, as you'll see in the coming moments. Okay, the time period for getting a visa. This is when the government needs to be at its most efficient. As we all know, the government is not always efficient, but I will tell you, with respect to people who win the lottery, the Immigration Service, which handles the rest of the process for certain winners, and then the U.S. embassies and consulates around the world, which handles the process for other folks, they're actually very, very good about handling the DV applications, and there is a reason for that. But they actually are good at it. I wish they were this good in dealing with all types of applications, but specifically with the DV cases, they're very efficient. They move the case along, they mark it for special expedited processing, and that expedited processing really does happen. So here's why this timing is so important. I mean, timing is important with all immigration cases, don't get me wrong, but it's specifically important with this type, and we'll see in the second paragraph on the slide why that is so critically important. So if you're selected for a diversity visa, the earliest you can submit your application, whether you are going to be applying, let's say you're overseas and you're going to be applying through the local U.S. embassy or consulate, or whether it's instead you're in the U.S. in some type of visa category, such as F1 student or H1B, and instead you'll be doing the last step, or this main step here, through the USCIS and the filing of an application for adjustment of status. So here's why it's so critically important that everything happen quickly and on time. You only have until well, I shouldn't say you, it's really the government has to process and approve your green card prior to September 30th. September 30th is the end of the visa year, and the law does not allow the government under any circumstances to go beyond that. So all DV green cards must be approved no later than September 30th. It doesn't matter if the Immigration Service accidentally misplaced an application or perhaps FedEx was a day late in delivering something, or whatever it is. The law does not provide any type of grace period. And because of that, the Immigration Service and the embassies are not able to offer any type of extension whatsoever. September 30th comes, September 30th goes, and that's it. So if unfortunately someone's application is still in the works at that point, unfortunately, there's no way for that person to get a green card. All they can do is go ahead and apply again next year and hope to have better success. So with all this being said, it's critically important that the applicant take all of the necessary steps, pay all the necessary fees, etc., as quickly as possible, as soon as they're eligible to do so. Now, of course, we recommend an immigration lawyer assist each applicant, but ultimately it's up to the applicant. If they think that they can handle it on their own, absolutely go right ahead for sure. But with that being said, because time is of the essence here, and September 30th is not just a sort of a deadline, it is an absolute brick wall of a deadline. Usually, in our opinion, it's best to have an immigration lawyer assist with the process to make sure everything is done properly, the applications are completed. And I mean, for instance, you don't want to submit an adjustment case and accidentally mark the wrong box or pay the wrong fee and have the case returned to you. It could take the government 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks to return this package to you with a rejection notice. And depending on what month of the year it is, that month that you lost might be just a slight headache, so you'll take some aspirin, or it could be a monumental mistake that there's no recovery from because there simply is not enough time by the time you resubmit it for the government to process your application. So here's a picture of the timeline that you're looking at, just to put it in graphic form so that you can see the various steps when they happen. And again, that September 30th ending date, that hard stop date. Now, in terms of winning, winning is always a good thing. But unfortunately, what the government does is because they know certain people who win will either actually end up being ineligible to come to the U.S. for some reason. Perhaps they really didn't have a high school education, or perhaps there's something in their background, some type of, unfortunately, maybe some criminal behavior or something else that would make them not eligible to proceed with the rest of the green card process. The government always approves more, gives more approvals than there are actual green cards available. So as you know, there are 55,000 available. The government will issue more than that in terms of DV winning notices to people. And then what they do to determine who can actually proceed with the main step in the green card process, they publish this list in the Visa Bulletin each month. There are actually 2 lists, but this is the first one. So what is the Visa Bulletin? Just as background, for many, many, many decades, the U.S. Department of State publishes a monthly bulletin, a written bulletin, of the cutoff dates in all of the green card categories, everything from this diversity program to family type green cards or employment-based green cards. And the other charts relating to employment-based and family-based, we won't get into today. Those are topics we've discussed on a prior date. So let's really look at this chart that we see. Now, unlike the family and employment-based, the various categories on those charts have a specific date, a cutoff date, meaning if you started the process before that listed cutoff date, you can go ahead with the last step. Otherwise, you can't. Here, instead, you see something totally different. Okay, you see a set of numbers. So first by region, and then certain countries that are accepted or taken out of that region. So what you see below are actually case numbers, although they don't appear to be case numbers, but that's exactly what they are. So for instance, let's say that you are a winner from Algeria. Okay, when you win, you're given a case number. Your case number could be 3, it could be 10,050, it could be 6,499. So winning is just the start. You now have to check the Visa Bulletin monthly to see whether you're actually able to proceed with the green card process. Unfortunately, there are people who win, like I just said, who never get to complete the process. They have a case number that is so high that the government never gets there. And so while they won the first part, they will have to reapply in future years and hope to win again. So let's say just hypothetically, you were born in Algeria and your number is 6,200. Well, if you look at this list here, so that's in Africa, of course, North Africa, and then you go over to the right side, Algeria, 6,500. So what this means is that because your number is better than 6,500, earlier than 6,500, you can actually proceed with the green card now, either via the U.S. Embassy, which involves the State Department, and then the embassy or consulate, or by preparing and filing an application for adjustment of status with the USCIS if you're physically present in the US. If your number, in contrast, is 6,503, unfortunately, you're going to have to wait. Your number is not yet current, but it's looking good, meaning hopefully soon it will be current. If your number is, Algeria, 12,000, you just have to keep checking every month and hope that the number moves ahead quickly and substantially so that you can also proceed with the green card process. But of course, much less of a chance of being able to do that than the person whose number is, 6,503. Okay, next. Actually, let me back up one more step. So in the visa bulletin, as you see, there are actually two charts that look like this. And the reason is this: to give the government, well, applicants really, and the government most especially, a jump start on processing everything. The visa bulletin will contain two charts, one for the next month. So for instance, the October visa bulletin will cover the month of November. But there will also be a second one of these charts on the next page covering the next month for December. So the rule is that if your file number is current on either one of these charts, you can go ahead and prepare and file your adjustment application, or you can move ahead with your processing application at the embassy or consulate. It's to give you a jump start. And again, also, of course, to give the government a jump start on processing these things. Again, because that September 30th date is immovable and cannot be changed or exceeded, by publishing 2 months at a time, everybody gets a jump start. And having handled these applications for decades, let me tell you, getting a jump start is really, really key. It is extremely helpful to know that even though it might not be current this month, we can still move ahead because the month after it will be current. So you're good to go. Important notes. If both spouses are eligible on their own, they can each apply for a diversity visa. And if either one is selected, the other spouse gets it too. So all you need is one spouse or one family member to win the lottery. And then assuming that the file number is good and you can go ahead with the green card process, you can go ahead and the spouse can also go ahead with the green card process, even though the spouse did not win the lottery. Now, this also covers minor children, for example, too. If one parent wins, both parents get it, and so do the minor children. Everyone can move ahead with the green card process. Now, each person can only submit one application per year, and the government is very serious about this. They really mean it. If someone thinks that they're going to outsmart the State Department's computer system, it's just not going to happen. If you file 2 applications or 10 or 50, you're going to be disqualified. Sure, you can apply again next year, and hopefully you'll learn your lesson and just apply once next year. But they're very serious. In the old days, people would try, when there were paper applications, to submit multiple applications in the hope that because everything was done in paper, maybe the government wouldn't pick up on the fact that you filed 20 applications. But honestly, they would. I mean, this is what they do. They're very careful about processing these things. So just one per person. Next, you can submit an application online from anywhere in the world, even if you're in the US. So it's not like you have to be in your home country, whether it's Poland or whatever, to actually file this. You can be anywhere that you have access to the internet. As we've been mentioning a minute ago, selection or winning doesn't mean that you're going to get the green card. Again, it's all subject to what your file number is and whether you're going to be able to proceed with the actual green card process itself. Paper applications and late applications are not accepted. And you can apply for the DV program even if you have a pending green card application under a different immigrant visa category. So it's important to note that you can use multiple routes to try and get the green card and actually make it into somewhat of a race. Now, depending on your green card category, the DV actually might be a lot faster. So you might want to just kind of put the other one that's pending on the back burner, as they say, and really focus on getting this DV green card, because as you know, it will have to be approved by September 30th, whereas green cards in really all other categories are not subject to any deadline. The visa year comes and the visa year goes. That the visa year runs from October 1 through September 30th. But there's no other category of green card really, other than certain categories that involve children's ages as they approach the age of 21. But other than that, the government has no deadline to process green card applications, employment-based, family-based. Yet with the DV process, they absolutely have that deadline. So you could turn it into a race. There's no reason, legal or otherwise, not to proceed with both and to see which one ends up the winner, so to speak. Once you get a green card either way, the other application simply disappears. I mean, at some point, the government will write you a letter saying, we noticed you got the green card already, hence we're going to simply close out your other pending application because you don't need it. Now, for those who are program managers or program directors of residency and fellowship programs, and of course for residents and fellows, and this also goes for any other folks who are on a J1 visa that have with it that 2-year foreign residency requirement that you're all very familiar with. The question I get a lot every year is whether if a J1 person who is subject to the rule, if that person wins the lottery or if the spouse wins the lottery, can the person get a green card and thus basically bypass permanently or get rid of that J1 2-year foreign residency requirement? Unfortunately, the answer is no. So I would say probably 4 or 5 times over the years, maybe more, probably more than that. I think I'm underestimating, but people will call me with that question or email me saying, I'm thinking about applying for the lottery. I'm on a J1, and I will tell them, please don't bother, because even if you win, even if you're selected, you're not going to be able to get a green card. And you're basically taking the place temporarily of a person who could be. I mean, you win, you can't proceed, so the government will go down the list and will update the filing cutoff numbers, so someone else will take your spot. But there's absolutely no benefit to you at all of being selected, knowing that you cannot proceed with the process. It does not help you in any way. It doesn't mean that, you're more likely to be selected again in the future when you have fulfilled the J1 requirement, 2-year requirement. So again, it does not fulfill the requirement. It doesn't allow you to bypass it permanently or to somehow do away with it. And I would tell you not to waste your time and effort in filing this application. Now, the next question that comes up is, well, what about my spouse? He or she is a J2. Unfortunately, same thing. That person is subject to the same J visa 2-year foreign residency requirement that you are subjected to, which means that 2-year foreign residency requirement does get in the way of them getting the green card as well. So there's really no reason for either of you to apply. It's actually very counterproductive. It's simply going to be going back and forth with the government. Ultimately, they will clearly see that you're prevented from getting the green card, and they're going to move on, and they will let another selectee proceed with the process. So once you have fulfilled that requirement, once you have fulfilled your J1 2-year requirement by either going home for 2 years or instead perhaps working at a J1 waiver job for 3 years, absolutely feel free to apply for the DV lottery. Hopefully you'll get it. And at that point, there will be nothing standing in your way, legally speaking, from actually obtaining the green card, because you have fulfilled that J1 requirement or fulfilled the terms and conditions of your J1 waiver requirement. Okay, any questions? Anyone have any questions? Okay, great. Okay, well, just a couple quick notes. First of all, as always, we really appreciate you joining us today for this meeting. Hopefully the information was helpful, and hopefully, perhaps there are people that you know from certain countries that may qualify for this program and not even know about it. Although it's widely publicized and many people do know about the program, perhaps there are people that you can think of that may not know about it. Perhaps people who just moved here on temporary visas, whether it's a student visa or an H-1B, and are not familiar with the program. This is a wonderful program. It really is exactly what it says it is, which is a free green card, basically. If you meet the requirements, then being able to live and work permanently in the US without having to go through the normal steps and delays and things is really huge. So if you have any questions, feel free, as always, to contact me. And I will have the contact information in a second, but just a quick heads up on the next session, which will be on October 17th, 2024. And that one will be on J1 waivers, and specifically two types of waivers, persecution and exceptional hardship. So I know that you're all very familiar with the J1 waivers we've talked about in the past, the prior session on J1 waivers, when someone agrees to work in a medical shortage area or agrees to work for a Veterans Affairs facility. Either way, it's for 3 years in order to obtain and fulfill a waiver, the requirement. But there are other ways, and we'll talk about that next month. But persecution and exceptional hardship, these do not require specific job offers or that you work in a specific area of the US. Instead, it requires you to prove to the US government, to the Immigration Service and the Department of State, that if you are required to fulfill the requirement, the J1 requirement, by returning to your home country, there is you would have a well-founded fear, and that's their terminology, well-founded fear of possible persecution should you be forced to return to your home country. So, of course, a lot of evidence is required, and the focus in that is really on you. We'll talk more about it, but it's not just that the country conditions where you come from that are bad, or there's a problem there, maybe some type of civil disturbance or what have you. Instead, it's really the focus on you. Is the government planning to persecute you in some way, or maybe a group is, should you return? Now, exceptional hardship, that's exceptional hardship on a US citizen spouse, if you have one, or a US citizen child, if you have one, should you be required to return to your home country and fulfill the requirement. So exceptional hardship, there are specific parameters that the government is looking for. And with both of these, just a final note, these are totally discretionary types of waivers by the government. Even if a person makes a very strong case, there's no guarantee that the government will approve the waiver. It's a multi-step process. It's looked at both by the Department of State and also by the Immigration Service. But if it's granted, it is a wonderful thing because it does allow the person to not have to fulfill the requirement, not have to return to the home country, and then the person can look at visa options for staying here into the future. And as for my contact information, well, here it is. My email address, telephone number, and website. And as always, it's my pleasure to hear from you, to answer your questions. I'm always around, so feel free to contact me. Email is a really good way to go if you've got a quick question. I'm happy to shoot you back a quick email. If it's something more detailed, I'd be happy to set up a consultation with you, and then we can either do it via Zoom or via telephone, or even via email if you want to list out your questions and then have me give you written answers. For more information, also please see our website. Now, our website is currently, it's under construction. So you'll see the current website, but if you check back, I would say in about a weekish, maybe 10 days, you'll actually see a new and upgraded website, which we hope will be easier to navigate, and we'll have more information in places where on the website that makes sense, easy to access, easy to review, so that you can get what you need in the shortest amount of time. Also has a nice picture of me. Actually, it was fun taking that picture, so you'll get to see me again. And with that being said, thank you all so much for joining us today. It's always a pleasure, and I hope you have a great rest of the day. So thank you very much again, and look forward to seeing you next month.